This radio program is PG-13. Parents strongly caution some material may be inappropriate for children under the age of 13.
The following program is sponsored by Michael W. Smith. The views expressed on the following program are those of the host and not necessarily those of staff, management, or ownership.
Arizona, this is Brother Mike. You're right. I'm back on the radio. Welcome to HardcoreChristianity.com. Welcome to the Arizona Deliverance Center. Today's Bible study, The Psychology of Yourself. Today on Hardcore. Friend, I'm going to teach you the most important Bible study you have ever heard. I'm not joking about it, and it's not hyperbole. Gotta call somebody and tell them the program's on today. This is Brother Mike. I'm the professional counselor at the Arizona Deliverance Center. We're downtown in Phoenix. We're on 15th Avenue, south of Osborne Road. It's a red brick building. HardcoreChristianity.com is the website. On the website, you'll notice that we have 2 live services every week, 7 o'clock, Thursday and Friday nights. You'll notice we have 4 Zoom services every week. Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you send me an email, mike@hardcorechristianity.com, I'll send you the code and the password for the Zoom services. Please remember we have a children's healing service the first Saturday of every month at 10 o'clock. We have discipleship training classes on Tuesday nights at 6:30 and the 4th Saturday of the month at noon. Please remember my Sunday morning podcast at 9 o'clock in the morning on StreamYard. Send me an email or call me, 602-636-5800. I'll give you all the information on all the services. And remember, we have a counseling center available for born-again Christians. You have no money, you have no insurance, you got no problem. 602-636-5800, free counseling services for born-again Christians. The psychology of yourself. Let me quickly tell you, folks, I don't have a lot of time on the radio program, as you know, but through empirical research, and there's been significant amounts of it in the psychology fields, that this is an established fact. Listen to me carefully. The way a person views themselves determines their future. What happens to you in your future is basically determined by your self-concept and how you view yourself. And people who have a negative self-concept or low self-esteem or are hard on themselves or nitpick themselves a lot, those type of people God cannot use. For the Bible clearly says in Proverbs chapter 23, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And as you know, many brilliant men have capitalized on this research and on this fact, and they become multimillionaires. For example, Napoleon Hill. For example, Norman Vincent Peale. For example, Tony Robbins. For example, Joel Osteen. These men have become multimillionaires, understanding the concept that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he, and a person's view of themselves determines their future. That's how these guys became filthy rich. For example, God called Moses, as you know, in Exodus chapter 3, to deliver the nation of Israel out of the bondage of Egypt. Well, Moses, 40 years earlier, had no problems with his self-esteem or his self-concept. He was a prince of Egypt. He had everything. He had the chicks, the money, the fame, the glory. He did whatever he wanted in Egypt and whenever he wanted it. Josephus says he was a great leader of men. He was a great warrior. Moses had it made. Well, you know, he had an incident happen where he murdered an Egyptian. Of course, that was a capital offense. If you murdered an Egyptian, you were put to death. So Moses ran. He ends up in the desert, and he ends up meeting an old man with a huge livestock business. And he joins the business as an employee. Then he marries the boss's daughter, has a couple kids. And 40 years later, God calls Moses out of a burning bush while he's out shuffling sheep around. The prince of Egypt had been reduced to shuffling sheep. And his self-esteem and his self-concept and how he viewed himself had tumbled with him. He had lost all of his strength and pride and leadership skills and everything in Egypt, and he had accepted his fate as a sheep shuffler. Now, remember, friends, and I don't want you to ever forget this fact, God takes a look at you, and he doesn't just look at you, he looks through you. Man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks upon the heart. God looks through you, and he sees assets in you that you don't see. God is able to spot assets in you that you don't see. Even when you're in the womb, for example, the great prophet Jeremiah, for example, the great man of God, John the Baptist, the greatest of them all. These people were evaluated and assessed by God in the womb. Well, God remembered Moses' assets of being an incredible leader of men. And so he calls him to go back to Egypt and lead out the nation of Israel. And Moses, because his self-esteem was now shot, and he viewed himself as a sheep shuffler, not as the prince of Egypt and a leader of men, he then starts to make excuses, and God has to sit there and listen to 5 excuses. Moses goes through a litany of 5 excuses. He was making excuses even after God showed him he was giving him miracles to take to Egypt. For example, his leprous hand. For example, his shepherd staff. You remember the story. And then God finally had to give him an assistant who wasn't supposed to go to Egypt at all. Aaron, his brother who ran his mouth like a busted chainsaw, he was the family blabbermouth. He was a people pleaser and an egomaniac, and he ran his mouth all the time. He wasn't even supposed to go to Egypt, but because Moses wouldn't listen and kept making excuses, one of which being he can't talk, God has to bring Aaron in. And you know the rest of the story. God finally convinced him to go, and Moses went. And of course, the victory was astronomical. If you take a quick look, at Gideon in Judges chapter 6, you'll see the exact same story. God called Gideon, and he saw into Gideon leadership skills. And he says to Gideon, you are a mighty man of valor, Judges chapter 6. And Gideon hears that and doesn't believe it. Why? Because Gideon has a low concept of himself. And he explains it to the Lord why he's a nothing and a nobody. He says, behold, my family's poor in Manasseh, and I'm the least in my family's house. I got a bunch of family members who are crackpots and kooks, and I'm the biggest crackpot and kook of them all. And the Lord said, I will be with you. You will smash the Midianites. And so Gideon gets 4 miraculous signs. You remember the fleeces? Yeah. Judges chapter 6 got his fleeces there, and chapter 7. And God has to talk Gideon out of seeing himself as a loser. How you see yourself determines your future. And if you cannot change your self-concept, God cannot use you in ministry. If you don't change your concept of yourself, God cannot use you. And Moses and Gideon changed their concept of themselves, and God was able to use them for glorious victories. And the great prophet Jeremiah had the exact same thing. God said to him, I know you're just a child, but listen, before you were born, I sanctified you and I ordained you a prophet to the nations. And Jeremiah, the kid goes, hey, Lord, I'm just a child. I don't even know how to speak. I don't do public speaking. I can't talk. And so God had to talk Jeremiah out of a low self-esteem state, which he did. The Lord said, do not say you're a child. I will go with you. I will tell you what to say, and that's what you'll speak. You won't need to be afraid of their faces. I am with you to deliver you, says the Lord. And God was repairing his low self-esteem. Listen to me carefully. You cannot be used by God if you have low self-concept and low self-esteem. You cannot do it. You cannot be used by God. The devil will block your ministry. He will block the rest of your life. He will block your blessings, your giftings, your anointings, everything you've got. He's going to block it. No question. Until you change your self-esteem and your self-concept. That's why God put in the Bible 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and Ephesians chapter 1. Those chapters are specifically designed to help the born-again Christian overcome their low self-esteem and change the psychology of themselves. Because in the secular world, which is what I came out of as a counselor in the field of psychology, it's a proven fact that what a person thinks about themselves and how they see themselves determines their future. If you need prayer on this subject, I'm ready. 602-636-5800. Send me an email, mike@hardcorechristianity.com. God had to repair the self-images of Jeremiah and Moses and Gideon, and he can repair yours. But until he fixes it, you will never fulfill your destiny, and you will never receive all the wonderful gifts that God has planned for you. 602-636-5800. See you next time.
The views expressed on this program are those of the host and not necessarily those of staff, management, or ownership. This program was sponsored by Michael W. Smith.